In this lesson, we'll start styling our first taco card. Before we begin, I want to make sure you have your React dev server up and running. So as a reminder, in your terminal, you can run npm run start or just npm start. And in your browser at localhost 3000, you should see that spinning React logo and that starter code. And as a reminder, that is coming from the source directory and the app.js component file. So I'm going to open up that file in VS Code, and we're just going to apply some Tailwind styles to start our basic styling. All right. So let's begin by getting rid of the logo import. We don't need that spinning logo, and we're not going to need our app.css file either, because we're not going to have any external styles in a CSS file. We're just going to use all of Tailwind's built-in classes. So let's remove that. And for our app component, we have this top level div. We can go ahead and remove everything inside it like so, save that, and now we have an empty canvas to work with. So here we can remove this former app class that is no longer relevant, and we can begin with a whole bunch of Tailwind classes. So what I'm going to do here is make this div a flexbox that's going to center all of our cards in the middle or center of the page. So I'll begin with the flex class to make this a flexbox. Then I'm going to add the flex row class that's going to make our flex direction row, because I want the taco cards laid out in a row manner across the screen. And then I'm going to add item center to apply align item center, and then justify center, which is going to apply justify content center, which is basically going to center all of the flex children within this div on both the horizontal and vertical axis. So everything is going to be centered. Then I want to make this div occupy the entire height of the screen. So I'm going to add h-screen that is going to apply a height of 100 VH, which is 100% of the viewport height, which is what the user sees. And then what I want to do is actually provide a background color so we can see this div. And that is going to be our taco gray color that we declared in our Tailwind config file in the previous lesson. So now we're going to have access to an auto-generated utility class from Tailwind called bg-taco-gray. And then finally, the last thing I want to do is add a class called text-center. And that is going to, of course, apply text-align center to center align all of the text content within this div. So it's quite a lot to take in, but let me save that. And that is what we want. So we have this top-level div, right? Right now, we don't see anything on the right-hand side because there's no inner content, so there's no height, so we're not actually seeing this. But in just a second, we'll see this big box appear on the screen. So within this div, we're going to add another div. And then within that div, we're going to add an image, and that is going to be our sample taco card. So let's begin by adding some additional classes to our div. So right here, we'll once again add class name. This is JSX, right? It's not regular HTML, so it needs to be class name. Right here, I'm going to make this a flexbox. I'm going to orient it to children in a column direction by doing flex-col. That is going to apply a flex direction of column. I'm going to apply a width here, and I can do that with the W series of utility classes. Here, I'm going to do W-56, which applies a width of 14 rem, or as we can see right here, equivalently 224 pixels. I'm going to give this div a white background. I can do that with bg-white. I'm going to apply padding all around this box, so top, bottom, left, and right. And I can apply padding in Tailwind with the P series of classes. So if I do P-, we'll see a whole bunch of classes related to padding. I'm going to do P4 here, which is going to be 1 rem, or 16 pixels of padding inside that div for all of the content that is stored inside it. And finally, I'm going to apply some margin, but only on the x-axis, so left and right of the div. And I can do that with the MX class. That is short for margin x-axis. And so that's going to apply margin only on the left and right, as a reminder. So I can do the MX2 class, and that will apply 0.5 rem, or equivalently 8 pixels of margin on the left-hand side and 8 pixels of margin on the right-hand side. I know this can be a lot of Tailwind classes to take in, but if there's any of these classes that you want a refresher on, you can always just Google for Tailwind followed by the class name, and you can see exactly what it defines within the Tailwind documentation. All of these Tailwind classes correspond with your typical CSS properties. These are all just built-in Tailwind classes that account for those other things. And so now we don't have to write those manual CSS properties on our own. We just have all of these available classes and we build them up together. I wish I could dive more deeply into what all these classes do in greater depth, but it's not really a CSS focused class. And to be honest, CSS is not really even my specialty. So apologies if we're moving a little bit quickly, but we'll get to the React stuff pretty soon with this approach. Okay, so that should be everything we need for this div. And now we can see that gray background appear along with this white box. And then the only other thing we need to add, of course, is our actual image. So right here on this image, I'm going to apply the class name attribute as well. And we only need two classes here, hfull, which is going to apply a height of 100%, and then object-contain, which is going to apply the object fit property set to contain. That is basically just going to ensure that our image fits exactly within this image proportions. So right here, we actually need to import one of our sample taco images that we added in the previous lesson. So at the very top, I'm going to import Crunchy Taco Supreme. That is going to be the name that I assign from my import. And I'm going to import it from /the assets directory. That is where we dragged all of our JPEGs in the previous lesson. And then I'm looking for the Crunchy Taco Supreme file. And then make sure you add the .jpeg extension at the end. That sometimes helps Babel figure out that we are indeed working with an image file. And so we've imported that JPEG into our file, and we now need to specify where we actually want to use it. And we do that by providing the src attribute to this image and then feeding it the actual reference to the imported Crunchy Taco Supreme, like so. Then the one thing that we need to add as well to get rid of this ESLint warning is an alt tag. That is just for accessibility reasons in case the image doesn't load in our browser. So I'm just going to give it a descriptive text like delicious taco, and that should make our issue go away. And you'll also see that Prettier now breaks up those attributes on separate lines. All right. So on the right-hand side there, we can see that we have our gray background. We have this sample taco card. Right now, it's not much. It's just a white background, but you can see it contains a sample taco image. And of course, as we continue, we're going to add the taco title, a button to add it to our order, and just keep building it up incrementally over the next couple of lessons. But this is a good place to start, and I will see you in the next lesson.